Hip-Hop World Cup.
A battle to the death. Classic albums clash until there's only one left. We rate them, we slate them, discuss them and debate them, analyze the beats and quote the lyrics verbatim.
Hip-Hop World Cup.
When all is said and done, we put it to the vote and tell you which of them is won.
Hip-Hop World Cup.
We going all in, so on the sound of the whistle,
Let the games begin.
Hello and welcome to Hip Hop World Cup, the podcast that pits golden age hip hop albums against each other in a contest to find the ultimate champion. I'm your host, Danny Phillips, and joining me as ever are Steve Hitchcock. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Danny. Hi, everyone. Hi, Larry.
And James Larry Luscombe.
How you doing?
Good, thank you. So, yeah, these are the playoffs. Well, this is episode 2. After a long hiatus since the last episode. I know you've all been feverishly waiting for us to come back, wondering when the next one is, and here it is. So what are the playoffs? And how does it all work? So in each episode, we pick 2 golden age hip-hop albums to compete against each other in a straight-up head-to-head contest. The 2 albums are chosen by each of us in turn according to a theme, or just 2 albums that we want to talk about. And then we discuss the albums and rate them using the tried and trusted TruSkore system. We'll tell you a bit more about that in a minute. And at the end, we vote for the album that we want to be our winner. Simple. In this episode, the 2 albums battling it out are Intelligent Hoodlum's Tragedy, Saga of a Hoodlum from 1993, and Organised Confusion from 1991, their self-titled debut album. So those are the albums. These 2 albums were chosen by Steve. Steve, do you want to talk about why you chose these 2 for us to talk about in this episode?
I kind of just went and had a good look at some early 90s albums, ones that I'd never listened to before. So I was looking at albums by King T, The Coop, Inner City Griot, Godfather Don, UMCs. So I gave them all a listen. But the 2 that I was kind of drawn to more than those was the Intelligent Hoodlum album, only because I like some of the stuff he did later on in the 90s as Tragedy, Gaddafi, and Organised Confusion have always kind of been a group that I've been interested in, but never really had the chance to listen to them. So, Ferry Monch has had some good stuff later in the 90s that I was kind of into, but never kind of went back and listened to his early stuff. So after a kind of quick listen of those 2 albums, I thought, let's go for them. They sound good, and I think they are actually.
Nice. And yeah, we should just say that. I mean, the way it's working out at the moment is that we're trying to pick albums that we kind of haven't heard before, or perhaps ones that, I don't know, some of us haven't heard, or just ones that we think there's a lot to say and we haven't really had a chance to talk about, and we didn't touch upon in the first series of Hip Hop World Cup. So these are all albums that we haven't talked about before. So Larry, have you had a chance to check these 2 albums out? What are your kind of overall thoughts on the choice and the albums?
Yeah, I think they're kind of 2 acts which most kind of hip hop heads will kind of know and love, I think. But for me, for one reason or another, they just passed me by at the time. So yeah, it was interesting to have a reason to go back and listen to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, full disclosure, I was very familiar with one of them, the Intelligent Hoodlum album.
Right.
But which I have.
Seems like your kind of album.
Yeah, and I'll get into why I bought it in the first place and stuff later on. But Organised Confusion was one that I'd never heard before. Just one of those that went under the radar, and I'm aware of their standing within the hip hop world. But yeah, just slipped under the radar. I think perhaps we were a little bit too young at the time for it to sort of really get on top of all the hip hop that was coming out.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
I'm surprised you hadn't revisited it, Steve, because you're one to kind of go back to these things, aren't you?
Yeah, it's interesting. You said I honestly don't know how either of these albums got passed over by me either. I don't know. Doesn't make any sense to me. But I'm very, very pleased to have spent the last month or so listening to these 2.
Absolutely, yes, and what a great way to redress the balance and sort of check them out properly. So, helping us along our way as we talk about the albums and assess them is the highly sophisticated TruSkore system that we've been using through most of Hip Hop World Cup. They've actually taken over the podcast now, so we are contractually obliged to use the TruSkore system. Larry, I know you've invested a lot of money in the TruSkore software.
Yeah,
considerable amount of money. So I think it's only right that you sort of talk us through kind of how TruSkore works.
Yeah. Well, we've all had to use the desktop version, haven't we? This time around, there's been some issues with the mobile app. I think last time we spoke, had some pretty big news in that it was going to come pre-installed on all Nokia handsets going forward, and that kind of that rollout was really successful. I think, I mean, there are dozens and dozens of people that have got access to it now, but as you two will be aware, there have been some issues, just kind of minor issues really, with the app accessing some people's bank accounts through their Nokia handsets.
So that's all been ironed out now.
It's going through the courts currently. Should be all sorted out by next episode, I'm hoping. And once I get back from my holiday in Barbados, we'll hopefully be able to just get it all sorted out.
Fantastic. So we're okay to use it in, it's not under some sort of court order or anything. We can
it's fine. As long as we only use the desktop version, that should be safe.
Yeah.
It's only the Nokia version that accesses people's bank accounts accidentally.
Great stuff. Well, thanks for clearing that up. So, I mean, I don't fully understand how it works, but I think a basic explanation is that we give each track on the albums a score out of 5.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, TruSkore does it using algorithms.
Yes.
Gives each track a score out of 5, and it's got calculated, an average is taken. I don't really understand. It's quite complicated technology. And at the end, you get a number, and it helps you assess which is the better album. Although it's not, we are not obliged to follow the score that comes out.
It's advisory only.
Advisory only. I mean, we should probably make that clear. Something else just to mention before we get stuck into these albums, just to ensure that everything is fair and above board, we have an official adjudicator here with us in the studio. This week it's John Barnes, ex-England winger. How you doing, John?
Hi, how are you doing?
Great. So you're going to be overseeing everything and making sure that we are above board and doing everything properly. That's great stuff.
Hip Hop World Cup. 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 Hip Hop World Cup.
So let's delve into the albums, shall we? The first one on the slab is Tragedy, Saga of a Hoodlum by Intelligent Hoodlum from 1993. So just on the Wikipedia page, it's his second album. He brought out the first album, Intelligent Hoodlum, in 1990. It's largely produced by a guy called K-Def. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the work of K-Def. He's a hugely underrated producer. It kind of comes from the House of Hits, Marley Marl. It's kind of stable. And he's done stuff for Lords of the Underground, groups like Real Live. And there was a remix he did by a person called Nonchalant, called 5 O'Clock. It was an amazing remix he did of that back in the day. But yeah, most of the albums produced by him.
It's him and Marley, isn't it?
Yeah, Marley's involved in a lot of them. There's a lot of co-production. But I think it's largely, I reckon it was kind of like Marley Marl. This is his protege, and I think he's, obviously let him lead on it, but with a bit of flavour from Marley Marl. Yeah, it's just a really, really good sort of 1993 album. Very much of its time. Let's start with you, Steve. What are your initial thoughts on this album?
Yeah, I really like it. I think it's a really good album. When I first listened to it, it kind of like got me hooked straight away because it's got quite a nice funky start. Some really nice kind of samples as you go through, and I think he's a pretty decent rapper. So, without going into individual tracks, I think overall it's a really decent album.
Yeah, it's a really good album, really solid. I think it's one of those where there aren't that many skippers. There's not many ones that you just kind of fast forward. It's solid pretty much all the way through. I mean, back in the day, the track that got me interested in this album was the Posse, Shoot 'Em Up, which I wasn't a vinyl buyer back in the day, but I loved this track so much. I think, again, it was one of the ones they played on MTV Raps. I had to buy the 12-inch just to have it because I loved it so much. Absolutely amazing track, and I was really interested in it from that. So I bought it, and it's one of the best tracks on this album, I reckon. I absolutely adore it.
Really nice chunky beats.
The thing I would say about it is they're some of the biggest drums I've ever heard in my life on this track.
Yeah.
Huge beat, and I was trying to work out what it was, and I didn't realise, but it's the 5 stair steps, Don't Change Your Love Break, really famous drums, but they've kind of chopped it up, pitched it down, and beefed it up quite a lot, and just huge drums, but the sample's great as well, and also the subject matter of the track is just like, I'd never heard anything like that before, talking about black cowboys and that sort of thing. And his delivery on it, really hard, really relentless, but also insightful and sort of educational, because you learn a lot about black cowboys you just didn't really know before. So yeah, that's my standout on the album. Larry, what are your thoughts on that track?
I really it's one of the ones that I kind of marked out as probably one of the best 3 or 4 tracks. Nice, lovely chunky beat, really sort of stripped down production, and I like the overall sound of the album. I think the drums especially are just really nice and raw, and really nice sample selection as well. Lots of sort of organs and pianos and horns. That kind of it's a bit reminiscent of Beat Nuts, I thought, in some places. I don't know, kind of if you think that's a bit of a mad opinion or. Yeah,
no, I think that's a good shout. Actually, they're kind of contemporaries of of K-Def and that sort of thing. Similar.
I can imagine some of the tracks on the Curious album and things like that.
Well, there's a very, very, very Beat Nutsy track called At Large. Which has got that Beat Nuts descending filtered bass line and the horns
and the looped horn. Very Beat Nutsy, definitely.
Yeah, and that's a good shout actually. That's a good shout.
Nodder.
Yeah, Steve, what's your standout on the album?
Well, yeah, definitely the Posse is definitely a standout. But I also think that kind of brings me to my main criticism of I was going to call him Tragedy Gaddafi then, but Intelligent Hoodlum, is that he can rap really hard on that track, because the beat's really good, and he's chosen some really good subject matter. I think on the rest of the album, his rapping is just he can rap really well, but his actually what he's rapping about just doesn't kind of elevate it high enough, in my opinion. I think looking at my TruSkores, he gets 3s and 3.5 for all of the tracks apart from the Posse and also Grand Groove, because I love that track as well. That's probably my second favourite.
Oh, that's interesting. We'll come back to that, because I've got a bit of a different opinion on that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
I think if he raps about more interesting stuff, he can get his teeth into. That's where he kind of shines. I just wish his other tracks had that kind of same. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's not particularly the lyrical content isn't massively memorable, but I think he's a very listenable rapper. He's got a good old school voice, and doesn't really put a foot wrong in terms of his style. I think he's got quite simple flows and cadences, but in that kind of good kind of old school way. I think it's just something you I don't know. It's
good. It's good, but not great, isn't it? He flows really nicely, but nothing ever stands out. And I think you go through the whole of the album, there's probably nothing there you think has been quoted in another track. Whereas if you listen to the organised,
there are a couple.
Maybe a couple, but compared to Organised Confusion, where in every track it's been sampled.
But I think that, just jumping ahead to Organised Confusion, I think sometimes they're just a bit too clever for their own good. Sometimes some of these groups, sometimes you want something just a bit more kind of basic and a bit more sort of rappy,
How could you be too clever for your own good?
No, but they're good. But this, Intelligent Hoodlum, he's like Larry says, he's a very good rapper. He's sort of in the pocket.
It's musical, isn't
musical.
it?
He gets the beat. He flows. He's on point. He's just a very easy, listenable rapper, and it's not that basic. I mean, there's some really nice wordplay and some really nice sort of stuff going on with his lyrics, but he sits on the beat really nicely, and it's just got that 93 sound to it.
It's an old school. It's like a bit of an MC Shan kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? It's just it is quite a good evolution of that kind of MC Shan and Marley Marl kind of combination. It's like a slightly modernized version.
Yeah, there's a lot of braggadocious stuff, a lot of bragging, a lot of I'm this, I'm that,
And we are in 1993 at the end of the day. I mean, I'm sounding overcritical, because I do think he is a good rapper, but I just think he could be better, because I think the Posse just showed.
Yeah, I think that's what stops it from being like a classic album.
Yeah.
I think actually, I think I'd have really liked this if I had it at the time. I think I would have really kind of had a lot more of an attachment to it. And when I look at the albums that we reviewed for 1993, in retrospect, I think this is kind of stronger than some of them. Like I'd much rather listen to this than like the Cam album from that year, for example. I think it's quite, you could quite easily say it's a top like 10 1993 album, I think, for me.
Yeah, I think
it is for me now. I completely agree.
But I think the lyricism, or the lack of it, just stops it short from being like a proper top fiver, and therefore making it to kind of classic status. But it is like, it's a proper head nodder.
Yeah, but like the thing about the lyrics is that there are a few where he does turn his attention to like a subject, or he does something, and when he does
Death Row is
Death
good.
Row, what's the other one? Street Life. Where he starts telling stories, and he raps about something, and I think that's when he actually really comes into his own. Like just thinking about Street Life is one of my favorite on this album, because I just love the way he rhymes and the way he sits on the beat, the rhyme scheme and the flow he's got on that track. The beat's great as well. It's quite laid back, quite funky, but
really
the way he sits on it and tells those stories, I love it. I just think it's really good, and it's really compelling live bass line.
But I would almost argue the same with the production of this album. It is probably just solidly average, good but not great on most tracks.
Yeah.
What do you think of Grand? Because I rated Grand Groove as my second favourite track for production and for rapping.
My personal opinion is that they should have just, because there's the Grand Groove like remix, isn't there, at the end with the Patrice Rushen sample.
Like
the bonus mix. I would have just put that in as the main mix, and that's one of the best. You can't go wrong with that sample, can you? I think the original Grand Groove sample is just quite boring.
Yeah,
it's an Isaac.
Isaac Hayes, Ike's Mood samples. So what do you like about Grand Groove than the original, Steve?
I love the sample. I love that Isaac Hayes track, and I think it can get a bit repetitive, but I don't know, it just kind of grown on me over time, and I think the rapping on it's good. I think it's solid. I've actually given it's got 4 out of 5 for me.
That's interesting. I've given it a 2.
It's a 2.5 for me.
But here's why. It's like, don't get me wrong. It's like the emotional lyrics. It's nicely delivered, and it's a nice sentiment to it about dead relatives or whatever. It's that obligatory dead relatives, dead homies track. But it just the actual music, the beat sort of bores me. It's just like a really lazy loop. Just takes that piano bit and just plays it over and over again, a bit repetitive. And for me, it's just a sort of a low point in the album. And it was a single, back in the 90s. It was one of the singles which always fascinated me. But yeah, like you say, Larry,
that makes me feel better, because we obviously always disagree on tracks, but
yeah,
it was a single, so it can't be that bad.
No, exactly. They obviously thought it was good. But I also prefer the the remix, the Grand Groove bonus mix, because it's got that Remind Me sample for the millionth time in hip hop, and also just it's probably equally as late.
Had it been used lots at that point?
I'd heard it around quite a lot at that point. I think it's used quite a lot afterwards as well. Yeah. But it was like we're talking about the Isaac Hayes loop being quite lazy. This is probably just a step up in laziness, because it's got the Skull Snaps break under the Patrice Rushen sample.
But it's such a good.
But it works.
Remind Me is such a good song that you just can't mess it up, can you?
It works, and it's so much better than the original. But horses for courses.
And then there's also on the track before that, Pass the Tech. Is it got I think it's got the same organ lick from a Black Sheep track, but again, I might be wrong. A lot of these same samples are being kind of used.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of stuff at the time.
That's a good point. I mean, this album is kind of like an A to Z of samples and breaks and drums and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like it's got you can tick them off almost as you go through the album. And also it's basically a Lou Donaldson remix album, because there's so many tracks that sample Lou Donaldson. It's like Potbelly, Ode to Billy Joe, It's Your Thing. Like going through the liner notes of the CD, it's kind of, and it's like a very Blue Note kind of album. And also you've got all the familiar drum breaks, like I said, the stair steps break. You've got skull snaps on there. You've got synthetic substitution on there somewhere, I heard.
Yeah.
But then everybody was using them back then.
You can't go. That's just all classic stuff. Isn't it? That's why these are classics, because it uses all of those sounds.
Exactly. That's what we like about it. And there's some interesting stuff actually, like on the opening track, the Shalom Alek track that uses that old producer trick of layering the drums from the Long Red break. Right. The mountain track where he's going louder, that one, that drum beat with the crowds clapping along. There's an old producer trick to take the snare from that and put it under the snare, so it kind of cuts through. Right. Pete Rock does it quite a lot. You just put the Long Red break underneath it, and it kind of gives it a bit sort of more of an edge.
Okay.
And K-Def does it on that track, and he just kind of and that track is actually quite a good opener.
I think the first 4 tracks are really good. I think it gets the album off to a really good start. I really like Underground. It's a really great track.
Oh yeah,
I love that. It's kind of it reminds me a little bit. It's somewhere between the Beat Nuts and the second House of Pain album. Just those kind of those horns are really infectious.
Oh, it's brilliant use of those horns.
It just bounces really well, the whole of that track. I think it just gets the album off to a really good start.
Yeah, for me it's in the conversation for the best track on the album, one of them. It's between that and sort of Posse and that. Yeah, the organ samples. And there's a really nice lyric in it as well. I think it's near the start where he goes, "When I peel stills from my brain like a banana, ends start dripping red juice like Tropicana," like that. That's quite good. Some really nice stuff on that. So,
I think for me, like the whole album, I would really happily have it on like in the background or in the car or something like that.
Yeah.
And you don't have to focus too much on it. It just, just a really nice background, like head nodder the whole way through, pretty much.
Yeah.
Not much to skip on there, really.
This will stay in rotation for me. It's kind of like forms part of my early 1990s hip hop. Knowledge and repertoire now.
It's funny though. Back when I had it, I never listened to it much. I never really. I didn't love it. I didn't listen to it that often. I like it when I revisited it for this. I heard as soon as every track came on, I knew them so well. So I obviously kind of did listen to it a bit, but
that does surprise me because I think that I would have really liked it.
Yeah, I don't know why. I didn't.
I think it's an album that you can like, but I don't think you're ever going to love it. I just don't think there's enough.
It might just be because it was competing with Doggy Style and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think
maybe and
Wu-Tang, Doggy Style, Ice Cube.
Yeah, that maybe just it didn't quite deliver what I got from those albums, so I just kind of shelved it a bit more. But listen to it again now. I really do appreciate that it's a solid album that I probably should have given a bit more time back in the day. And just going to quick shout out for the skits, the little interludes, the loops, like Hoodlum intro and the one at the end, the funky roll outro or whatever it's called. They're really, really good loops. Not the sort of beats that you could imagine him rapping over, but just as little interludes. I thought, like, I admire where they find these little sections of tracks and just loop them up.
Come on, y'all. Let the games begin. Come on, y'all. Let the games begin. Come on, y'all. Let the games begin. Come on, y'all. Let the games begin.
Okay, so moving on to the second album, going up against Intelligent Hoodlum's Tragedy Saga of a Hoodlum, is Organised Confusion from 1991, their debut album by the Queen's hip-hop duo. It was released in October 91. Got a bit of a cult following this album. Obviously not with us because we never really heard it before, but it was given 4 out of 5 in the Source, which obviously is quite a good score. Not a 5 Micah, but 4 out of 5 is pretty good. And obviously the duo contains Pharoah Munch and Prince Poetry, to give him his full name. And an album from 1991 that kind of went under all our radars. Larry, let's start with you on this one. What are your overall thoughts on this album?
My initial thought is that I bet this is like a Steve Hitchcock kind of album. I bet he really likes it. Am I right, Steve?
Well, you have to wait and find out.
Yeah. I think it's got your kind of rapping on it, especially. I think it's got the kind of thing that you would like. I think
It does, yeah.
for me, like the majority of it, like being a little bit flippant, but it's that kind of high tempo rap music, which whenever I hear it, I picture people with high top fades dancing to it on Dance Energy with Normski, with their trousers tucked into their socks, and sort of doing that dance where they spin around on the spot and things like that. Do you know the kind of music?
I know the kind of music you mean, Larry, and it's
Yeah.
funny because there's a track on here called "Releasing Hypnotical Gases" that it reminds me of a UK hip hop track from that era, the sort of
Yeah.
music that you would see those people dancing to
Yeah.
on BBC Two,
Yeah.
like Silver Bullet, London Posse. It's that sort of tempo.
That kind of
The
high
drums.
sort of 100 BPM or something.
Yeah.
Really shuffly kind of, tambourines in the background and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's my sort of main takeaway from listening to it, really. I think, just to be completely, I never kind of had it at the time. I only sort of really, I think, heard about Organised Confusion later on, like during like the Raucous era, when Pharoah Monch became like a solo artist, and he was like, people like really rated him. But I've never been a massive fan of him. I don't really like his voice. I just find it quite strained and grating, and although he's technically really, really good, I just struggle to want to listen to him. I think Prince Po is much easier on the ear for me. I would have preferred a solo kind of outing from him, I think.
Yeah. Well, there's one of them that sounds like one of the members of De La Soul. Which one is that?
Exactly what
Yeah.
Prince Po. He sounds like
Prince
Posdhumus, doesn't he?
Posdhumus, that's right. Yeah.
And in fact, I like one of my when I was kind of listening to this and writing my notes, the first thing I wrote is it's quite De La-esque.
Yeah.
Like lyrically, and the cadences and just his voice. It sounds like, I think it's Posdhumus. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
But the music's quite similar as well.
Yeah, definitely. So that's quite an interesting take then. Yeah. So it's not as listenable as you perhaps would
Certainly
want
not.
it to be.
Pharoah Monch isn't. I think.
Because he's quite revered, isn't he? He's
really
held up
revered.
as a kind of a great lyricist. Is that right?
I just think there's just something about his voice. I just don't. It's a bit, I don't know, like it's not nasal. It's a bit, I don't know. It's just it just sounds a bit strained and painful to me.
So how would you counter that, Steve? What would you say to that?
I think it's interesting that Larry's kind of penned this for an album that I like, because I do really like it, and but it was weird though, Larry, because actually when I listened to it the first couple of times, didn't really get into it that much. And
Yeah.
it's like it's grown on me like so much. Every time I listen to it, I get more and more into it, and I think it's because the rapping. I think the rapping is just on a higher level from the Tragedy album, and it's just more complex, more intelligent.
Yep.
And also just think like these guys are like really creative. Like when you're listening to them rap, and actually I think you're listening to the tracks as well, it just like draws me in and just makes me want to listen to it more and more and more. And every time I listen to it, I'm like, oh, they've just done that, and they've just done that. And I had to like go back and check, because this is like from 1991, isn't it? And I was like,
Yeah.
is this really a 1991 album? It just does not feel like it should have been out in 91. It feels like a late 90s album, or like
I mean, I was thinking it sounds like a really early version of kind of like a backpacker, raucous,
it does.
fat beats type of thing.
It's definitely ahead of its time, and also going down like the Pharoah Monch debate that we're just having there, because I do like him. I like when he was at Raucous, there was a couple of tracks he did which were really good, and then there's some other stuff I thought, oh no. But then some of his more recent albums have been really good, but I don't know why I never felt inclined to go back and listen to the Organised Confusion stuff. And I'm really pleased that I have, because I can now see why people do hold him in such high esteem, because he is a better rapper than Prince Po. I think there are a couple of tracks when Prince Po kind of does hold his own. I think even on the first track or the second track, like Prince Po's even like taking the mickey out of himself, saying like, I'm actually getting to rap first on this track. Not normally allowed. I can't remember which one it is. Probably Walk Into the Sun.
I didn't pick up on that.
But yeah, I just love the creativity. I think they bounce off each other really well. There's good back and forth. They just, I don't know. It's just the creativity for me. This feels like they were really kind of going out there in 1991 and doing something that
It feels a little bit earnest to me.
In what way?
I don't know, just in exactly that way. I think like with Harry Munch, I just think sometimes I'll give it a rest, mate. Chill out.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, like just being a bit too cerebral sometimes.
It's a bit Cool Keith for me, and that's why I thought Steve would like it.
Yeah.
Why you and I, Danny, wouldn't like it so much. It's that kind of super scientifical kind of, like you say, a bit clever for its own good, and it's really innovative for the time, but I just don't particularly like it.
It's funny because I obviously sounded a bit negative on it, but I actually really do like this album. I really enjoyed it, listening to it, and it's funny that you say about it sounding like it was ahead of its time. Like for me, it sounds very much of its era. It sounds very much like a 1991
I think
album.
it's lyrically ahead of its
time. Yeah, musically, it's very much of its time. It's the sort of album I can imagine hearing on, Pete Tong's rap show or something like that, with those kind of fast up-tempo beats. It's the fast BPM. It's very chaotic, lots of sounds and samples going on, very energetic, lots of things coming in and out. That
wasn't like typical of 91, like the albums that we would have liked in 91.
I think
more kind of like obscure underground albums. This definitely would not have felt out of place being released in like 96, 97.
You think? I just think there's a sort of the sound of some of the drums and some of the bass lines and some of the drum programming as well have quite a 91 feel.
I think it's very 91.
Yeah,
I mean, it's got that kind of it's almost a little bit Bomb Squad-y, Dr. Dre-y, kind of lots of different things going on. What I do think is really commendable about it is that they rarely just stick with the same main sample throughout a song. Like they switch it up for different, like for verses and choruses and things like that. And that's good, but that's not massive. Like if you compare that to like Bomb Squad type production, it's not. And and Prince Paul and people like that, it wasn't uncommon to be doing that kind of thing back then. So I think musically it's quite of its time. I think it's the lyricism and the verbal kind of dexterity that elevate it, but just not in a way that I personally really like. It all seems a bit. It seems a bit very heavily influenced by that Big Daddy Kane, Rakim kind of rhyming style and flow and just fast.
And the wordplay is quite clever, isn't it? They're really into kind of that. But I do have some criticisms. I mean, I think the album starts really well, but then like probably from like Organised Confusion on to the end, it's not as strong. And I really don't like the tracks about chickens. That just doesn't. It doesn't fit on the album. I don't know. That's the only tracks I skip. That because there's the remix and the original. I just think it's annoying.
I think the remix is probably quite good of the chicken song.
Yeah, well, again, it uses the Skull Snaps break, doesn't it? The old that's that break beat once again. I mean, it's funny. It's like, to me, it has the feeling of other 1991 albums that I loved. And I probably would have considered it a classic. I would have loved it had I had it back then. Like you say, Larry, Bomb Squad-y, Public Enemy, kind of almost this other stuff like Second to None and things like that, just with stuff coming in and out and changing samples.
I think Prince Paul's probably the closest.
Prince Paul, that sort of thing. Just very creative, very eccentric sort of sound, and restless as well. Just lots of different sounds coming in. But the one thing I was surprised by, that it was more musical than I expected it to be. Like on Fudge Pudge, for instance, there's like keys and then there's a lot of piano player and there's guitar in there and there's all that sort of stuff. So that was something I didn't quite expect.
That's probably the best track on there, I think, Fudge Pudge.
And funnily enough, I would agree. And also, funnily enough, the first ever sort of contact with Organised Confusion that I ever had was on OC's album,
Right.
Word Life, because I think they produced the first track on that.
Okay.
And then he's on Fudge Pudge, as a sort of guest rapper, and you can tell he's a young OC because he's got a sort of, his voice sounds higher and that sort of thing. He's a bit more energetic, he's a bit more naive, but you can still hear it. It's sort of definitely him.
Yeah.
And you could hear how he would develop going forward. But yeah, Fudge Pudge is for me probably one of the best tracks on the album. I love that piano. For me, it really sounds like Trends of Culture, and you know how I feel about that group. So it had that kind of vibe for me. But yeah, Fudge Pudge is really nice.
Walk Into the Sun's good as well.
Yeah,
I think the first 3 tracks are all really good, isn't it?
Yeah. Steely Dan sample on there.
On which one?
On Walk Into the Sun.
Oh, nice.
It's Green Earrings by Steely Dan.
Oh, nice. I was wondering about that. Yeah, I love the samples on that.
Which again is like Steely Dan are quite a like a Prince Paul-y kind of thing to sample.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots going on in that track and on the production. The one that I really don't like, I bet this is Steve's favourite, is Releasing Hypnotical Gases. I just don't like that rapping style of sort of.
I love it. It's grimy. It really suits very much that track. I think it's perfect.
I've got very 1991 written down on this one. Fast-paced beat and rapping, and I thought the lyricism was pretty great on this album, to be honest with you.
This is where I think we always differ. It's just I think I listen to these tracks completely different to you, and I think because in my notes I put this doesn't sound like 1991 to me. I'm like, this is just like it's blowing my mind that this was released in 1991. It's like,
I think Releasing Hypnotical Gases is quite forward thinking. Definitely, but
it's just that beat. It's a very like quick, fast beat, like a lot of drums going on. Fast, like they would sort of thing they would throw in.
I can't fault his skills at all. It's just a personal thing for me. I don't like Monch's voice, and I can't. That's to me is just a deal breaker, really. If you don't like a person's voice, like a rapper or a singer's voice, then there's not much to. You can't really get around that.
Yeah.
From a purely technical point of view, now you appreciate the skill of the rapping. They both rap good. Barry Munch is the best. Is the best rapper. I can see it's so good.
I would concede that point. I think that's it's hard to argue against that. He's really good, really advanced for the time. It's just not for me.
But musically, it's a good album as well. You know, if you're comparing it to Prince Paul, that's a compliment, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, I personally, I'm not like, as we've discussed before, I'm not the biggest De La Soul fan. I think they're really overrated, and I would kind of put this in like I would quite happily say that this is as good as their kind of first couple of albums. One of those albums I can see the appeal, but it just doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Any other standouts for you, Steve?
Yeah, Russo Town. I think that's got a nice kind of smooth and mellow beat, and then the kind of rapping matches that really well.
It's quite a menacing beat on that.
Quite a menacing. It's the North Carolina break, Les McCann, all you sample spotters out there. That's one of the many times that break's been used as well. But yeah, I like Rough Side of Town. I think there's a really nice energy to it.
I love Open Your Eyes as well. That's a real earworm. I can't get that out of my head at the minute. Just got the chorus going around in my head.
That's a great track as well, and it's a Herbie Hancock sample, Chameleon, on that one. And the minute I heard it, I recognised it, but I couldn't place it, so I had to do a bit of sort of digging and look it up. And it's part of the Chameleon track that they don't normally use. They normally use the beginning bit with the bass line, but it's a nice bit later on in the track that they've sampled on that one. So yeah, that really appealed to me, like a bit of Herbie. We talked about Organised Confusion. I quite like that one. It's got hard drums, funky bass line. The bass line kind of sounds quite live, a bit of a party jam. And again, I've got something Pete Tong might have played.
Definitely. There's a lot of danceable kind of tracks on there, aren't there? Yeah,
definitely. And also, I don't know if you noticed, but on the track Intro, which weirdly is the second to last track, it's got the vocal bit that's sampled by Dell on Whack MCs. Did you hear that? Yeah. I thought, I know that.
Yeah. It's nice when that pops up.
Yeah, that nice one, and a Cool and the Gang drum break as well. But yeah, I like that one towards the end. But yeah, overall, I think it's it's one of those, again, Larry, we say this every time, but one of those that had we had it back in the day, we might have thought a bit differently.
I also think, just compared to the type of stuff that I really loved back in 91, I like the harder kind of music, like the Public Enemy, NWA, that kind of sound. I don't think this would have massively appealed to me back then, to be honest. If you look, I mean, just like, Death Certificate, Apocalypse 91, Del Funky Homo Sapien album, Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, like these are all much better albums, I think. Low End Theory.
Yeah, definitely.
And like Ethel for Zagging, like they're just all like, it doesn't compare to any of those.
There's a lot of good competition in that year, and I think probably got lost in the noise. So that's Organised Confusion. Join us in a minute when we come back. We're going to vote for which one we want to be our winner. Join us in a minute. Okay, welcome back to Hip Hop World Cup, where we've been discussing the Intelligent Hoodlum album, Tragedy, Saga of a Hoodlum, and Organised Confusion. It's been a lively debate, chaps, but now we're ready to talk about which one we want to be our winner. So using the TruSkore system was interesting on this one. Some interesting numbers, chaps. Steve, what are your numbers looking like?
So my TruSkore for Intelligent Hoodlum came out as 3.2. So I think that's probably pretty fair reflection, pretty just a bit better than average, I guess.
Yep.
So Larry, what are your numbers looking like for Intelligent Hoodlum?
Quite similar, a little bit better. My Intelligent Hoodlum was 3.36.
Interesting. Mine works out at 3.15.
Okay.
So this is
it's a 3.2, isn't it? Average score.
Yeah. Interesting that we've all kind of arrived at similar.
Yeah.
Kind of.
It's
scores.
It's got a couple of. It's got 2 4s in it. No, sorry, it's got 3 4s in there, which is what elevates it. It's got a few 2s as well. And
I think that reflects the debate as well. We were broadly in agreement.
Yeah, I've got 4 4s and a 5 in mine, so mine's kind of
a 5. Bloody hell!
Yeah. The posse.
Yeah, but it's
such a.
Five's got to be absolute classic. It's not
5.
That is to me. That is to me. I love it.
The world is yours.
No. Yeah, but some of these tracks are as good as World Is Yours to me. I'm not going by what the rap world in general think about these. I'm thinking about what I think. But yeah, so that's kind of what brought mine up. What did you give Organised Confusion then, Steve?
It got 3.4, which was not as high as I expected, actually, because I initially thought Intelligent Hoodlum was going to be my favourite album on the first listen through. Organised Confusion just got better and better every time I listened to it. But actually, when I scored it, I only got 3.4. But I feel like I'd want to do I'd want to elevate that manually.
Right.
Anyway,
do you have the option to do that within the TruSkore?
I don't know if the desktop version allows you to do that. It keeps asking to access my photos. I keep saying no. So.
Yeah. You got to be careful. You got to be careful with that.
I think it's at least a 3.5 album, definitely.
And remind me what you gave the other one.
3.2.
3.2. So on paper, and this is not binding, on paper, your better album was Organised Confusion.
Yeah.
But I should just point out to you, everybody at home, these are not binding. We don't have to go by the TruSkores. Okay, so when it comes to vote, Larry, what did you give Organised Confusion?
Organised Confusion was a 2.8.
2.8. So yeah, on paper, your winner would be Intelligent Hoodlum.
Yeah.
So for me, mine were actually a lot closer to 2 scores. I gave Organised Confusion 3.07 compared to 3.15 for
it's very close.
Intelligent Hoodlum, so it's quite a tight one. So yeah, I mean, those are the numbers. hugely exciting, massive jeopardy here in the studio. Your green screen studio, Steve's going absolutely ballistic with all the numbers and figures behind you. I can see they're just sort of, I see like the bookies taking odds on what's going to win.
The Vidi printer.
Smoke coming out of it. This is highly exciting. So let's go for the vote then. Let's see which one is going to win. Let's go with you first. Larry, are you going to go with your numbers, or are you going to go?
Yeah, I think it's probably obvious from the way I've been talking about it. Like Intelligent Hoodlum, I just like the overall sound of the album a lot better, and I think 3.5-ish is a, you know, like 3.36 is what it came out, but I think that's pretty fair. It's, you know, it's average, but it's good.
Right, lovely stuff. So that's 1-0 to Intelligent Hoodlum. For the sake of Jeopardy, Steve, I'm going to come to you next. Let's find out what your winner is. Are you going to stick with the numbers, or are you going to sort of deviate? What's going to happen here?
You two know which way I'm going to go, probably even before the podcast. So I like both albums, but I'm growing to love Organised Confusion even more. So definitely going to go with Prince Po and Pheromonch.
Exciting stuff. So that's 1-1. It's on a knife edge. And I think, I've got the casting vote, and I
Crowd
think
on edge of their seats.
that absolutely, yeah.
Some people got their heads in their hat. They can't bear it.
Can't bear it. You can cut the tension with a knife here. I think I'm gonna have to go for Intelligent Hoodlum. I'm gonna stick with the numbers. That's gonna get my vote. It's one slightly biased. I kind of knew the album already, whereas I didn't know Organised Confusion. But I think objectively, weighing the two up, I just think I get a lot more from the Intelligent Hoodlum album. It speaks to me more. It's from an era of hip hop production that I really love, and so much on there. Funkier. It's that kind of that typical hip hop production. And as an MC, I connect with Intelligent Hoodlum a lot more than I do Pheromonch and Prince Po. So I think for that reason, I'm voting for Intelligent Hoodlum, which means it's a 2-1 win, and that is our winner for this second episode of Hip Hop World Cup, the playoffs. Are you happy with that, chaps?
Crowd's going mental.
I lost again. It's just
Lost again, Steve.
shocking. But you know what? I guess I chose the two albums, so I should have picked something that was going to win. Really.
But that's hip hop. It's Cool Mistress. And in the next episode, I'm going to be choosing the two albums that we're going to be putting up against each other. So that should be interesting. Look out for that in the next episode in about another 6 months. For now, let us know what you think of our winner. You know, hop onto Twitter or Instagram at Hip Hop World Cup, and just let us know what you thought of the winner.
You'd be the first one.
You'd be the first ones, but you know, come on. Somebody has to share your thoughts on our episodes or 90s hip hop in general. But for now, until the next episode, we're out. Peace.
Have we not got John Barnes on the line?
No, he's gone. Got fed up.
Got a contract with Lucasade to settle.
Yeah. He's got to film some more adverts. Peace. See you later.
Them high World Cup.